I've spent weeks rewatching the entire MCU, digging through countless Reddit arguments, and surviving the worst Twitter meltdowns imaginable just to understand one thing: why Marvel fans keep believing facts that are completely wrong. And honestly, I've discovered something shocking. People are still messing up the most basic details of the MCU. So today, I'm breaking down the 20 biggest misconceptions fans swear are true. And I'm gonna tell you right now, some of these are absolutely going to annoy you, which is good. So tell me exactly which one exposes you the most. Starting off, Hulk cannot be hurt by anyone. I love the idea of Hulk being a walking tank, and on paper he's built like one. He shrugs off bullets, survives building-sized shocks, takes hits from Thor, and even handled the power of the Nano Gauntlet in Endgame. His gamma-fueled physiology, healing factor, and sheer strength make him one of the most durable beings in the MCU. I get why you believe he's untouchable, I really do. But here's where some fans, maybe even you, get carried away. In one Reddit thread, a fan wrote, "Hulk is basically indestructible, and no man, you're way off. Hulk gets hurt more often than you think, you just ignore it because it ruins the fantasy." In The Incredible Hulk, Abomination's bone spikes literally pierced his skin, and in Ragnarok, both Fenris and Surtur left him noticeably damaged. Then you've got Infinity War, where Thanos beat him without even touching the stones, and Age of Ultron, where the Hulkbuster shook him hard enough to shut him down. And of course, the Nano Gauntlet basically cooked his entire arm. So yes, he's tough, but invincible, not even close. RDJ improvised most of Tony Stark's dialogue. I get it, Robert Downey Jr. feels so naturally like Tony Stark that you want to believe he just walked onto set and made everything up. And to be fair, the guy did improvise some of the coolest moments in the MCU. The entire first Iron Man movie was built on loose pages and on-set riffs, and the iconic "I am Iron Man" line wasn't scripted at all. Even in later films, RDJ shaped emotional beats by adding his own rhythm and personality. I love that about him. But some fans, and don't act like you've never been one of them, blow this completely out of proportion. There's a tweet that says, "RDJ improvised most of the scene's lines because you know he's Tony Stark himself." Yeah, that's not even close to reality. Once the MCU became a multi-film machine, scripts were locked down to protect continuity. And Anthony and Joe Russo, the directors of Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, have said it clearly: RDJ improvised moments, not full scenes. He added flavor, not rewrote movies. So yes, he's brilliant. But he didn't ad-lib the MCU into existence. Captain America's shield is pure vibranium. I get why this one throws people off. In the MCU, Howard Stark holds up the shield in the first Avenger and straight up tells Steve, "It's vibranium. It's stronger than steel. It's the rarest metal on Earth. No alloy, no mixture, no secret formula, just pure vibranium." So if you grew up on the movies, you're completely right to think the shield is made entirely from it. But here's where a lot of fans, and yes, I'm talking to you too, get things muddled. People start blending movie canon with comic canon and assume they line up perfectly. They don't. In the comics, Captain's shield isn't pure vibranium at all. It's a vibranium steel alloy accidentally created by Dr. Myron McClane, and over the years that composition has been reworked, retconned, and expanded more than once. In some versions, adamantium even becomes part of its history, so yes, MCU Captain's shield is pure vibranium, but believing that's true across all Marvel universes, that's the misconception. Edward Norton was fired because he was difficult. I've seen this one repeated so many times, it's basically fandom folklore. And I get why. Norton's Bruce Banner feels totally different from Ruffalo's, and the MCU moved on so quickly that it's easy to assume there must have been some explosive drama behind the scenes. Even I used to think Marvel just kicked Norton out for being a problem. But the truth is way more layered than the meme version you've probably heard. A Reddit thread on r/Marvel Studios even has a top comment saying Norton was replaced by someone easier to work with, as if that's the entire story. But that's not what Marvel actually said. Their official statement made zero mention of Norton being difficult, and they clarified the decision wasn't about money either. It came down to creative differences, long-term commitments, and finding an actor who fit the collaborative style of an ensemble franchise. Norton himself has said he didn't want to be locked into multi-picture deals, so yes, something didn't click, but the Norton was a nightmare story is just fan fiction. Thor can only fly using Mjolnir. Back in those early Thor movies, I was convinced of the same thing you probably were. The hammer's doing the work and Thor's just hanging on. He spins Mjolnir, throws it, grabs the handle, and the camera sells it like the hammer is basically a magic jet engine. If that's all you remember, of course you'd think no hammer, no flight. But the longer you actually watch this character, the less that theory holds up. Once Thor stops clinging to the idea that his power lives inside a chunk of metal, everything changes. In Ragnarok, he's leaping into the air, hovering over armies, and slamming down like a lightning strike with no weapon in sight. By that point, the hammer isn't missing. It's irrelevant. Stormbreaker doesn't restore flight either. It just gives him a convenient handle on what he can already do. Thor doesn't borrow power from Mjolnir, he is the power. The hammer was just training wheels, and you stayed stuck there longer than he did. Scarlett Johansson was killed off because she asked for too much money. I've heard this rumor so many times, it might as well be printed on the back of the Blu-ray. And honestly, the first time I saw Natasha fall in Endgame, I wondered the same thing you probably did. Did Marvel just kill her off to save money? It's the kind of theory that spreads fast because it sounds dramatic and fits the internet's favorite narrative. Studio gets greedy. But once you look at what actually happened behind the scenes, the whole idea collapses. Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, the writers of Infinity War and Endgame, have explained in multiple interviews that Natasha's sacrifice was planned early in development, long before anyone stepped on set. Johansson didn't ask to leave, she wasn't fighting with Marvel, and the studio wasn't trying to shave down her paycheck. In fact, she filmed her solo movie after they decided to kill Natasha, which makes the money theory sound even more off base. If Marvel was trying to cut costs, they wouldn't have paid her over $20 million for Black Widow. This wasn't financial strategy, it was emotional storytelling. Spider-Man killed Mysterio in Far From Home. I've watched Far From Home more times than I want to admit, and every single time I finish it, I'm amazed at how many people still walk away thinking Peter killed Mysterio. And maybe you've said it too, it's one of those claims that spreads because people remember the twist ending, not the actual scene. I get it, J. Jonah Jameson shouting accusations is loud, the truth is quiet. There's even a Reddit thread with someone saying everyone thinks Spider-Man murdered Mysterio, like it's an open and shut case. But if you actually watch the moment frame by frame, it's painfully clear Peter doesn't land a single lethal blow. The drone system Becca created is what misfires and hits him. Peter's last move is grabbing Beck's wrist to stop him from firing again, not killing him. And when the illusion collapses, Peter even checks on Beck. That is not the behavior of someone who murdered anyone. Mysterio wasn't killed by Spider-Man, he was killed by his own lies. Brie Larson was hated by the MCU cast. I've lost count of how many times I've seen people online swear that the MCU cast couldn't stand Brie Larson. And if all you've ever watched are those chopped up drama edits, I get why you might have believed it. Even I stumbled across that Entertainment Tonight interview, the one with Don Cheadle and Chris Hemsworth, and thought, okay, was something going on here?
We're fighting right now. I think it's been an all-day thing.
Covering.
And she eats bacon. Is that
Oh, like nobody's business.
A lot.
3 pigs on the way down.
That's
She ate 3 whole pigs One on the was way on.
That's
down.
the secret to everything.
Just an escalator on the way down.
Yeah.
I did.
But then you watch the full clip, and suddenly the tension disappears. Cheadle literally laughed through the entire exchange and later tweeted that people were twisting it into something it wasn't. Same thing with that BBC Radio 1 interview people keep using as proof. The clip where Brie jokes that Sam Jackson isn't her friend gets passed around like a smoking gun. Meanwhile, the full interview shows them teasing each other like actual best friends. And don't forget those viral cast-annoyed compilations, hours of footage squeezed into 5-second reaction shots. The hostility never existed. What did exist was a lot of creative editing, and you fell for it. Captain Marvel is the strongest Avenger. I've been in enough MCU debates to know this topic sets people off instantly, and if you only remember the moments where Carol blasts through ships or goes toe-to-toe with Thanos, I get why you might have crowned her the top of the food chain. I used to treat her like a walking nuke myself. She's that impressive when she's fully powered up. But somewhere along the way, fans started simplifying the whole power scale into one sentence. There's a Reddit post that literally claims Captain Marvel is the strongest superhero in the MCU, as if the universe only measures strength in one direction. Carol is absolutely one of the heaviest hitters, but she's not the automatic champion. Wanda nearly crushed Thanos with raw force. Thor's lightning output dwarfs anything Carol's shown. Doctor Strange has cosmic-level versatility. Even Hulk, at his angriest, hits a different kind of threshold. It depends on what strongest even means, and most fans rarely define it. Captain Marvel is elite, no question, but calling her the strongest? That's oversimplification wearing confidence as a disguise. Terrence Howard was removed because he was a bad actor. I remember hearing this rumor everywhere back in 2009, and maybe you did too. People saying Terrence Howard got tossed out of the MCU because he wasn't good enough. And the more it spread, the more it sounded like a fact. But once you actually look at what happened behind the curtain, that theory falls apart faster than you'd expect. Howard wasn't pushed out for performance. In Iron Man, he was literally the highest paid actor on set. Marvel clearly valued him. What actually happened? When it came time for Iron Man 2, Marvel tried to slash his salary by a massive amount. Howard has talked openly about this, saying he was blindsided by how aggressively the studio cut his contract, and Marvel didn't deny it. They simply recast the role and moved on.
Said we think the movie would be successful with, instead of the $8 million that we've said we're going to pay you, we're going to let you come back for $1 million.
Fans love to pretend this was some talent issue, but it never was. This wasn't bad acting, it was bad negotiating. And Howard was the one who got squeezed. Black Widow has no enhanced abilities. The moment someone claims Natasha is just human, I already know they're repeating something they never actually looked into. Because if you pay attention to anything the MCU has shown us about the Red Room, it becomes obvious she's operating far beyond normal human limits, and honestly, you should have noticed that by now. I didn't fully appreciate it myself until I revisited Black Widow and the Red Room flashbacks. Those girls weren't trained like soldiers, they were engineered. The Red Room program used biochemical conditioning, neurological rewiring, and a Soviet variant of the super soldier serum, something Agent Carter and MCU companion material make completely clear. That's why Natasha reacts faster than enhanced opponents, survives impacts that should leave someone paralyzed, and resets her stance in seconds after hits that would put you and me in a hospital bed for weeks. Saying she's a normal human is just ignoring the evidence. The MCU never called her superpowered, but they never pretended she was baseline either. Chris Evans refused to return as captain because he dislikes Marvel. I've seen this rumor get tossed around so casually that people say it like it's established fact. And I get why you might have believed it. The internet loves turning a normal career decision into some dramatic breakup. Even I stumbled on threads claiming Evans walked away because he couldn't stand Marvel anymore. One Reddit user even said, Chris Evans doesn't even like Marvel anymore, that's why he won't come back as captain. But that take completely ignores everything Evans has said publicly. He didn't leave because of drama. He left because Steve Rogers' ending actually meant something to him. Evans has talked in interview after interview about not wanting to cheapen that final moment. There were no contract fights, no bitterness, no behind-the-scenes issues. His arc simply reached the finish line. Evans didn't refuse to return because he dislikes Marvel. He stepped away because he respected the character more than the internet does. Nick Fury lost his eye in a battle. I used to buy into this one too, the idea that Nick Fury lost his eye in some classified shootout we'd never hear the full story about. And honestly, if you only watch the early MCU movies, you probably believe the same thing. Fury never corrects anyone. He lets Coulson, Hill, even Captain America assume he paid for that scar in blood. It fits his whole world-weary spy who's seen things persona perfectly, but then Captain Marvel shows us what really happened, and it's one of the greatest rug pulls in the MCU. Fury didn't lose his eye fighting Hydra or taking on some impossible mission. He lost it because Goose, the alien Flurkin disguised as a house cat, scratched him during a quiet moment. And the best part, Fury just lets everyone believe the tougher version. He leans into the myth because it makes him sound dangerous. Fury didn't lose his eye in a heroic battle. He lost it to a cat, and he's never corrected you about it. Mark Ruffalo was almost fired for leaking Ragnarok. We all remember that interview, the one where Mark Ruffalo casually drops "Everybody Dies" during a Good Morning America segment with Don Cheadle. And if you didn't remember it, you definitely remember Cheadle's reaction. That moment went everywhere. I saw it live and thought the same thing you probably did. Is Marvel about to bury this man? But that slip doesn't even come close to what happened next. At the Thor Ragnarok premiere, Ruffalo accidentally left his Instagram live running in his pocket and streamed the opening of the movie to thousands of people, full audio. Minutes of it, people online lost their minds. Fans swore he'd be fired. Headlines made it sound like Disney was drafting his termination papers, but Marvel, they just laughed. Hemsworth joked about it. Kevin Feige called Ruffalo a serial spoiler. There was never a punishment, never a suspension, never even a public scolding. Ruffalo didn't almost get fired. You just believed a rumor because it made a good story. Thanos needed all 6 Infinity Stones to snap. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people insist the snap only works if you've got the full Infinity Stone starter pack. And the wild part is that some fans say it with absolute confidence. One Reddit user even wrote, he needed all the stones to snap because the snap wouldn't work otherwise. But here's where that argument falls apart. The snap isn't powered by the number of stones, it's powered by what the stones are being commanded to do. Thanos didn't assemble all 6 because he needed them to bend his fingers. He did it because he wanted a precise, instantaneous, universal culling without collapsing reality in the process. The Power Stone alone can obliterate planets. A snap with fewer stones would still work, but it would be ugly, unstable, and nowhere near controlled. He didn't need 6 stones to snap. He needed 6 stones to snap cleanly. Chris Hemsworth nearly quit because Marvel mistreated him. I've heard this one tossed around so casually that some fans say it like they were standing in the room when it happened. And if you only remember Hemsworth's early interviews, the ones where he said Thor felt stiff and overly serious,
you have to also speak up and put your kind of stamp on it and take ownership as well. And it just under the stars aligned at the right time. You know, I feel it's nice to sort of finish strong with it as opposed to sort of, you know, I'd hate to have sort of gotten to this point and feel like I'd sort of...
I get why you might have jumped to the conclusion that Marvel pushed him to the edge. Even I I used to think something behind the scenes must have gone sour, but that theory falls apart the second you listen to what Hemsworth actually said. His issue wasn't Marvel mistreating him, it was that Thor had stopped being fun. The Shakespearean dialogue, the rigid tone, the same heroic beats over and over, he was bored. That's why Ragnarok changed everything for him. Marvel didn't fight him on it, they gave him Taika Waititi and let him reinvent the character from the ground up. And when Hemsworth eventually took a step back years later, it wasn't because of drama, it was because of his health and wanting balance. Marvel didn't push Hemsworth out, he stayed as long as the role stayed exciting. Spider-Man suits were always Stark tech. I know this idea pops up all the time, the belief that Peter Parker wouldn't even have a suit without Tony Stark swooping in like a billionaire fairy godfather. And if your memory starts at Civil War, I get why you'd think that. Stark hands him the upgraded suit, the AI, the gadgets, the Iron Spider legs. It's easy to assume that's where Peter's entire identity starts. I used to lump it all together the same way, but then you remember something a lot of fans skip right over. Peter was engineering his own gear long before Tony ever gave him the time of day. The homemade suit wasn't just a placeholder, it was proof he already understood web fluid chemistry, mechanical triggering, stitching, and impact resistance, and once the dust settles by the end of No Way Home, he's right back to building his own suit again, completely independent. Tony gave Peter a boost, not a backbone. Spider-Man was Spider-Man before Stark, and he stays Spider-Man long after him. Tom Holland spoiled major MCU movies. Every fandom has that one punchline everyone repeats, and for the MCU, it's Tom Holland being the kid who spoils everything. You've seen the memes, you've probably even shared one, and honestly, Holland's energy makes him an easy target. The guy talks fast, gets excited, and trips over his own enthusiasm sometimes. So when I came across a Reddit comment saying, has there ever been an actor more prone to leaking his own movie information than Tom Holland? I understood why people ran with it, but here's the part you probably never checked. He's never spoiled anything major. Not Infinity War, not Endgame, not No Way Home. The spoilers he's famous for are things like a poster reveal, a title slip, or a staged joke Marvel used for marketing. Meanwhile, every real leak came from merch, trailers, or anonymous sources, not Holland. The truth is simple, Tom Holland didn't ruin any MCU plot, you just enjoyed the running joke too much to question it. Loki permanently died in Infinity War. I remember sitting in the theater during Infinity War and thinking, okay, they're not playing around. Loki's death in that opening scene felt brutal, final, and for once in his life, not wrapped in trickery. And if you walked out of that movie convinced Loki was gone forever, I don't blame you. I felt the same because that version of him was gone, permanently. But here's where people start twisting the timeline. Just because you saw Loki again doesn't mean the Loki from Infinity War survived. That's where a ton of fans, maybe even you, get tangled up. The Loki in the Disney Plus series isn't a resurrection, he's a branch version from 2012. A guy who never went through Thor, the Dark World, never bonded with his brother, never sacrificed himself. He's a restart, not a return. The death in Infinity War was real. What came after was a variant, not a resurrection. RDJ demanded the highest MCU salary or he'd quit. Every time people talk about Marvel salaries, someone eventually brings up the myth that Robert Downey Jr. strong-armed the studio. You've probably heard it, the idea that he walked in and said, "Pay me more or I'm done." I've seen this claim so many times that it started sounding believable, but once you look at what actually happened, that whole narrative collapses. Downey never issued any ultimatum. He didn't march into Kevin Feige's office, Feige being the president of Marvel Studios and the guy steering the entire MCU, and demand a raise. What RDJ really did was negotiate a back-end deal that Marvel willingly offered. And when the Avengers blew up and the MCU turned into the biggest franchise on the planet, that contract paid out exactly the way contracts are designed to. Marvel didn't get bullied. They invested in the guy who built their universe, and the numbers followed. If you want to see me stir the pot even harder, go watch my breakdown of the worst scene from every Marvel movie